Reactive Training Systems.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the RTS podcast. I'm Mike Tuchscherer and I'm talking to Ryan Stills. Now, Ryan, you and I have done a podcast before in kind of a long time. And with the way that powerlifters typically swap, like it's like there's a new population of powerlifters like every couple of years. I think by now we have to have gotten like almost the entire population to have been a powerlifter for 6 months and then swapped out with another cohort, right? Like there can't be that many cohorts left.
I would agree with that.
Well, for this cohort, let's just touch briefly on some of your. Well, let's start with your competitive history. I think that's probably the people that do know you probably know you best as a powerlifter and an athlete. So let's start there. How did you get into powerlifting in the beginning?
So I was about 120 pounds and in 8th grade. And I went to a high school powerlifting meet in Racine, Wisconsin, where I saw somebody my weight deadlift 185 pounds. And I told my dad, I said, you know what? I think I can do that. And we went back to the house and had our little 1-inch barbell set in the basement and worked up to 185. When I mean worked up, I think we took like 2 warm of singles and then put 185 on and I pulled it. And I thought, wow, I could be decent at this. But then, all sports and everything and got into high school, played football and realized, because I was a smaller kid. For those of you that don't know, I'm about 120, 125 kilo, almost as heavy as Mike is. And so when I was trying to gain weight, I had a coach who is my biology teacher who said, you should start powerlifting and really put on some size. So I started powerlifting my junior year in high school, I was 15, 16 when I did my first meet. And I was not good. I was not great. I lifted at 165s through high school. I think I did one meet at 181s. And I tell people the story that when I qualified for state my senior year and I took 11. And I thought, not bad. I think my geared total was like 1150 or something like that. And I thought, all right, we're getting there. Almost top 10 in this high school state meet. And then I after that, going to college and then getting out of high school, I started eating a lot more. My body started to fill out more and I started lifting at 198s. Well, 2000, I won junior nationals and that kind of started my progression. So from there, lifted opens, got to meet a lot of people that I've known for now 30 years plus. Dave Ricks. If you've seen, me at any of the meets or any of the nationals around, with Tony Harris, Dave Ricks, myself, we've been hanging around with buddies for many decades now. So we've luckily traveled the world together. And now that I've been a master, I've had 5 Masters World Championships that I've actually won. I dropped weight for another one to see what I could do and travel all the way to Minsk, Belarus. And it turns out dropping 15 kilos and traveling across the world when your flight is delayed. And Mike, you know how it is. Coming in and I took 3rd that year and I vowed not to drop again. So that's been my most recent. I think in 2021, I got, for the first time, I got best lifter at Masters Worlds. I had been runner up 2 different times. So yeah, it's been,
That's wild, man.
Pretty
First
good.
of all, that's crazy. And like 5 world championships is taken from somebody who understands like how difficult that is to achieve. That's freaking impressive. That's awesome. And I am always maybe surprised isn't the right word, but I guess maybe just interested in like those moments when you first catch the bug, as we used to say. My story is somewhat similar in that, like, I remember really early on, maybe not the first day, but like one of, my first 5 workouts probably with a real barbell, being able to bench 1 plate, 135, and having the same thought, like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like based on the fact of like, I'm good at this, thinking
Right.
I'm good at this already, when clearly you're not. But it's almost like the lack of perspective is important,
It's relative, right? It's relative. You see people
Yeah, yeah.
around you and you're like, well, no one else is really doing this. I must be exceptional.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, you do have to there does have to be a spark there to get you to follow through with this for, over a decade. Get to get to the point where you are actually pretty decent at this, and then you continue to get better and better for the next couple decades if you're lucky, you know? So that's
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think for me, when my original coach, Bruce Sullivan, had been doing this, and so he started a team back in the 70s. Um, and he had so many different people. So our state was really in high school. Everyone went through Bruce. Like all the coaches that were coaching at these different schools had a connection to Bruce. And even as I got older and realized guys that lifted in Wisconsin went and did other things, I think Gary Frank was one of those. Again, I mean, once again, that's a name
Really?
that, and I know whenever I'm on these, I drop names of people that have been competing for 20 years. But like a Gary Frank, who's just enormous and huge in the sport back in like the 90s. The first time I met him in person, we were talking and I mentioned Bruce. He goes, wait a minute. Oh, Bruce Sullivan. He goes like, when I lifted in high school, and sure enough, there was his story tying back. So it's really, there's a couple of those pioneers in different sections of the country, I think, that
Yeah.
really progressed and moved powerlifting forward.
That's wild. I didn't know. So for listening, Gary Frank had the all-time highest total by a lot for a long time, in the 90s in multiply, but I don't think like he wasn't known as like being like really deep into the equipment. He's just like a brutally strong dude. Um, that was kind of his reputation. I didn't even know he was from Wisconsin. I think he was living in Louisiana at the time.
Yeah, I that's the first place I had met him. Was he was coaching a high school team out there. Um, yeah, I don't know how his path crossed, and he knew Bruce, and told the
Wild.
story, and yeah, yeah, it is. And then Kazmar was another guy that they were about the same age, and he knew, he was a Wisconsin guy, and yeah, and he tells stories about, well, I remember when I was in high school, and then when I went to, 'cause I think he went to University of Wisconsin actually as I think played offensive guard, but yeah, yeah, there's
Dude, John Heck is from Wisconsin. Like,
it,
this is crazy. What's going on here? That's wild. So that's it's also wild, by the way, that you started at 120 pounds and but 270 pounds.
yeah, started
That's
120 pounds and ended at 120 kilos.
yeah, that's quite a transformation. Um, yeah. So that's kind of the athlete side of what you're doing, but you're also a coach and a gym owner as well.
Yeah, so I've been coaching since probably 1999. I started a high school program in my hometown, and this is before online coaching, right? Because this is before
Yeah.
online. So you would have for me, it was high school kids, and then I had a couple open lifters that would lift with us. But if anyone doesn't know, this is all geared lifting. So there was myself, and I was really, really introducing the sport to this high school, Case High School. Our cross towns where I went to school is Horlick, and that's where my mentor, and they've had a program forever. And it was just, they had state and national championships and all these great, people are setting off to, these world championships. And I'm just trying to start up a team. And we did pretty well. I mean, I think we were like top 3 one year at nationals, but this is all geared. So I'm teaching kids, here's a suit, here's wrapping your knees, and being able to do that in a bench shirt and running around with 25, 30 kids at a meet. So I realized really quickly, I needed to train some of these kids to handle their friends. So, yeah, I did that. And then when online started coming around, and I got more involved in that, my wife and I were doing a little bit of online training and all maybe 10 years ago, and just decided about 4 years back that we're going to open up our own gym. So we opened up Odd Barbell, which those of you who don't know, powerlifting back in the day was the odd lifts, which I think was, let me see, there was squat, bench, and I think strict curl was the first combination they had before they added deadlift. But they're the odd lifts because the actual weightlifting lifts were the Olympic lifts. So I thought that was a nice play on words. My wife came up with it. But then when she said to me, she goes, well, yeah, ODD, Olivia Deacon Donovan. It's our kids' names.
Yeah, cool.
And so she took the kids' names and did that way. I was thinking the other way. I'm like, oh, that's really good. So we met on that and ended up doing well. And we live in Portland, Oregon, which is many things are, keep Portland weird. So yeah, so we had that. And then I really started looking at more online coaching and coaching in there. So, yeah, it's been great. We opened up just before the pandemic, which if anyone has ever opened a business or has a business model, make sure you do it just before you shut down. Cause that takes all the stress off. When you put all your money into something, then they say, perfect, you cannot be open. We were open for 2 months before they had to shut down. So,
Oh my God.
that was
To spend a lot of money and, acquire a lot of expenses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. Oh man. So you somehow managed to weather that then.
Yeah, we're lucky. We had a decent base of people that joined us, and we also were able to be creative within the parameters of how you're able to stay open. We weren't able to stay open as a gym, but what we were able to do was we had a scheduling tool that allowed people to come in one at a time for an hour block. And so we opened up all day long. And if you put it in there that you were there, and luckily we didn't have any outbreaks during the time that we were doing that. So that showed a little bit. And then we rented out equipment that we had. I mean, there's any way we could keep people engaged. And now we're sitting at a nice spot. We don't do this to get rich. Anyone that owns a gym knows that it's a passion project. I've got a day job. But it's something where we have a great community, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So.
Yeah. So the last time that we talked, I think it was a surprise to me during our conversation, but something I think it's a relevant topic. So for you, athletically, you're vegan, and you've been vegan for a while now, several years now. I guess, could you speak to that a little bit? Like, how did that come to be, and like, how does that connect in? I mean, obviously it connects in a big way with your athletic pursuits, but does it connect in with your coaching as well?
That's a good twist on it. Yeah, it really, it gave me a little bit of a niche perspective for some. For me, I had tried vegetarian, pescatarian, which for anyone who doesn't know, that's where the only meat you eat is fish. I had tried these throughout the years, going back probably 12 years. And I just couldn't get it to stick. Like I would start to lose weight right away. And I thought, it's tough for me to do, to be able to maintain weight, perform at the level I want to, and stay with these, with this diet. But it would chip away. It would chip away at me because from my own internal ethics and my perspective on life, which is my own, I looked at it and I thought, I don't really want to have to impact another sentient being's existence for me to exist. So about 4 years ago, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going, and that's going to be it. And if I lose weight and I can't compete at the level I was at, I can live with that. It's, because at some point everyone knows that you've got those things that define you more than others. And I felt that this defined me as a person more than me as a lifter. And, as I made the switch, and it was not the easiest to start, 'cause I didn't really have a base. I take that back. I would say I didn't have a me to say, this is what you should do. But the community was so great. I found I was losing weight. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine who's a vegan chef. And, I said, well, what do you have? What am I not doing? What am I not eating? And so he introduced me to a couple of different foods that I hadn't really utilized as much, tempeh being one of them, seitan being another. And so I was like, all right, well, I can get into this. I can start eating like this. And I reached out to another competitive athlete that I knew that did strongman, Patrick, and he was a great guy, reached out. I'm like, hey, Patrick, I'm not able to maintain weight. And he goes, well, have you tried a lot of the nut milks, And I'm like, no. He goes, sometimes I just chug those like nobody's business. And they're like, 10 grams of protein a cup. So I was like, well, okay, I can start that. And so it was a matter of maybe 3 months, that I started just losing, and then it was game over. I realized kind of how to balance things and what to eat and how to eat it, and, nutritional timing with things that worked for me. And then protein shakes, just like anyone else. But instead of doing like whey, I do, organic pea. So using pea proteins, and within, I think, 6 months, I was as strong or stronger than I had been. So yeah, but it definitely was my own naivete in jumping into it, just not knowing I didn't know what I didn't know, even though in the past I'd done it, but I got the same results. But I thought, if I'm sticking with this, I got to learn more. And there's great, books out there now, Plant-Based Athlete by Robert Cheek, and Robert's a great guy. I picked that up, started reading it. And I'm like, oh, hey, science. I think it turns out full complex, proteins are, across the board. As long as you're getting, all the branch chains you need, you'll be fine. So yeah.
You deadlift with a hook grip, right?
Yeah.
It strikes me that your approach has been similar to the way that people adopt hook grip. You try and fail and try and fail, and then at some point something happens. You go, God damn it, I'm not leaving this thing. I'm gonna stick with it until I figure it out. And you figure it out.
Yeah.
That's I mean, like I'm joking. There's That's really true as well. Like there's a big learning element to it, it sounds like. And yeah, I find the tactics around it pretty fascinating. So like you talked about, bringing in more tempeh, um, and you know using nut milks and things like that. So was it mostly a matter of, were you doing other things, like were you tracking macros or anything, or you're just like trying to, you need more calories than what you're getting because you're losing weight, so it's just a matter of like making that effort?
Yeah. I tracked my macros. What I normally do is, anytime I have a dietary change, I'll track them until I realize what's working. And then I have a wheelhouse that I stay in. Right. So when I did this, I started looking at, all right, my protein levels seem like they're low. Well, how do I get them up? And then I'd realize, by getting my protein levels up, being vegan, like if you're looking at tofu and all, there's a high amount of carbs that come along with it. So then I was like, all right, well, if I have to take in, so let's just say that I'm 120 kilos and I was taking in, 95 kilos, or I'm sorry, 190 to 220 grams of protein. Then I'm like, all right, well, if I'm doing that, where does that put me? Because then I have to look at what do my ratios look like for my overall day. Because if I'm doing that, but it's 4,000 calories because of the fat and everything else that comes with it, I'm like, well, I can't do that. I know I need to be, closer to the low threes to be able to maintain where I'm at. So once I realized some of the things that I could eat that didn't have a very high carb rate ratio to the proteins, like seitan is one, monks have been eating seitan in the East for centuries. But that people out here poo-poo it because it's vital wheat glutens. And they're like, well, I'm gluten intolerant now, which is fine if you are. But to me, if you don't have celiac, gluten's normally going to be fine for you. And it has been fine for me. Like I said, most of these things are not new. But it's like the old saying, whatever is old will be new again. And that's, tofu, same thing, been around forever. But now it's more popular because you can use it in the things, and I can make cheesecake with it, and I can do or using nuts to make cheese, like you have cashew cheese and it's delicious. So just having those those different items and knowing what works and how it fits in. And to your analogy with the hook grip, it took me meeting and knowing people to put me on the right track, similar to what Mark Robb did for me for my hook grip.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems like a lot of people for hook grip have trouble committing to it unless they have a reason to, which for a lot of people seems to be a bicep tear. But yeah, I think the commitment though is the through line. I mean, you started to touch on some of it there, but I'm sure along the way, well, I'm sure along the way you've run into a lot of misconceptions, but one argument I want to tee up for you is that I think your best powerlifting performances were after you made the switch, correct?
Yeah, I've been as good or better in anything I've done, and that's also with aging. So you're looking at my with the fact that I'm not only are my numbers, I mean, I'm squatting. Like at this meet, I've got a couple of variables that come along with me, right? And like I said, I'm turning 47. I've got a shoulder that needs to be replaced. So getting a bar on my back is something I can do normally. Maybe right now it seems like 2 weeks before a meet or so, I can try to do that. But I mean, I was SSB squats for doubles at 300 kilo. Things like that are pretty solid. Those are numbers that I started looking back and I'm like, I don't think I've ever done that before. Deadlifts have been maintained in the mid to upper 700s. And the body weight and body composition is about the same, chubby, but it works for it works for me and my performance and my goals. So yeah.
So what other kind of misconceptions have you heard as you kind of traverse this path?
But I think so. The biggest thing is like plants have all the protein you need, and whether you choose that or not, that's your personal preference. But people will tell me, well, it's the hormones and meat that make you strong, and you're like, all right, well, okay. So if we're doing this whole carryover of somebody or some beings life and how it's impacted you, I'm like, there's a big longer story that would go along with that. If you're taking in so much tofu and soy, estrogen levels go up and you're going to get weaker and you're going to get softer. And that's just not how that works. I think the masculinity part too, right? When my wife and I go out and I order and she orders, cause she's not fully vegan, so we go out and they have let's say that they have a burger and then they have a plant-based burger. They'll always give her the plant-based.
The assumption. Yeah.
The assumption, right? The assumption that, well, this large guy over here, bald guy with the beard, he's clearly not the one that's eating the plant. And then when I'm like, oh, that's actually mine. And it happens so frequently now that it's like the ongoing joke, right? So, but that's kind of where the society is. And that's one of the things I want to make sure if I can do so is, break down some of those stereotypes that you can be the same person you were or that you want to be without having to, eat meat. Like for me, it's the impact on, another sentient being. I don't foresee myself changing that at all. That's something that's started to be hardwired in me. But I don't, I do that because it's my own personal choice. And I live in the Pacific Northwest. So for me, it's not that tough now because I have a lot of options.
And do you travel back to Wisconsin very often?
I do get back. And I tell you, that is a tough one.
It's tougher.
In the dairy state, there's not as many vegan options when you're going out to eat. Yeah, they do have a couple stores. I think they had like a Festival Foods or something I went back to that's near my mom's place, and they have a nice little aisle of plant-based products. And so, once I found that, but it's nothing that it wasn't really advertised. I happened to go into the store with her when we were back, and I'm like, wait a second. I looked through and I'm like, this is what this is like my section. So now when I go back home, I'll stop there and load up. And I do the same thing when I travel for meets now, because it's, if you don't load, I remember going out to Sweden, would have been maybe 3 years ago, and 3 years, 2 years, either way. And I fly in, and I think I flew in, I had to drive out there, or I had to like take the train, and how those are. So you don't necessarily, because some of these meets are not in the biggest location. And so it's like trains, planes, and automobiles just to get to the meet site. So I get out there and it's raining and it's like 9:30, and I'm looking up on, I think it was like Yelp, to see what do they have around here for stores. And I find a store, and it closes at 10, and it's 15 minutes walk away, and it's raining. But I know if I don't get this, the hotel is not going to have food for me. So I'm hightailing, I walk, it's probably, a half mile, 3/4 mile walk in the rain, just off the plane, off the train, off the bus. And I'm going out there, I get in the store, and I grab my cart, and I'm loading things up. And literally the guy tells me, you have to leave. Like, it's 5 to 10. He goes, we close at 10. I'm like, well, yeah, I got 5 minutes. He's like, you have to leave now because we close at 10. So a little bit of a cultural difference. Like, they're like, no, at 10 o'clock, we walk out the door. So I took what I had, rang it up, had like 4 bags. So I carried the 4 bags back with me. But I had, almond milk, and I had tempeh, and I had seitan, and I had vegetables and fruits and peanut butter and almond butter. So I had plenty of things that could sustain me. And you don't need to have like, I got a meat coming up, I better eat this steak, and I better have the, that's not how it works. So doing things like that and planning ahead seems to be a lot better. And then once you get into a place, and you ask around, I mean, it's the 21st century. So being able to look things up online and, talk to people, it's getting a lot easier than it was. Cause I talked to people that were vegetarians and vegans back in the 70s and 80s, and they're literally making their own, it's like, oh, we made our own, patties, and we made our own this, and, we had to make our own tempeh. And like, wow, that is way more difficult. And I would love to think I had that type of discipline.
Committed, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it seems to me like the groundwork is being laid for a lot of this, like general understanding of nutrition is better in the sport. And I don't know like how much of it is like exposure difference between you and I, because imagine you interact with a different demographic of powerlifters on average, and you probably hear from a different demographic than I do. And it seems like the general understanding that, hey, macros are the big rocks in the jar. And it's not to say that other things don't matter, but like that's the thing you got to get into place first. And there's a lot of other considerations to be made after that. But it's less impactful on a sport like powerlifting. And also it connects to a lot of other things that are not just sport performance, right? Like there's, like you were talking about, connecting into your ethics, but like health, generally speaking, is a really broad category, and can take a lot of different shapes. Anyway, I guess I'm saying that it seems to me like you probably are met with more open-mindedness and more understanding nowadays than people were in times before.
Yeah, I think
let's say pre-internet.
Yeah, I think there's 2 sides of that, really. Yeah. Because there's the definite times that people are very excited to see that I'm able to do what I do, and others are able to do what they do, and on a plant-based diet. And it's celebrated by those communities. Like, oh, this is really great. We appreciate you putting out there. But then you've got an entire other side, I eat raw liver, and, I do this. And then people will tag me in these things, just furious because there's, of what they're saying that the only reason that somebody can be strong and a vegan is because they're on steroids. And then they're like, no, this guy, and they like get me involved. And I have to reach out to them like, this doesn't impact me at all. And it shouldn't impact you. I understand you get upset because you want to be able to say, this is not how this actually works. But I
It's
do get,
upsetting when people were basically lying.
yeah. And I've come to the point where and it also comes with age, right? I think that, I've done enough things. I've gone against the grain in the past. I've been liked, I've been hated. So you get to the point where you're fine with yourself, but I do understand that, people want to, utilize, those different platforms to speak whichever agenda they have. And I think that works, it's been a positive for a lot of people that want to have other options and how they live their lives. And from like the perspective of seeing, people like myself and other vegan athletes that have done this, it's great for them to see that and know that it can be done. But along with any of that, you're going to get the other side of it, which is, well, here's the only reason that they ate meat for 20 years. That's why they got so strong. And now they're just carrying that over. I'm like, well, once again, that's not science. Your body doesn't hold on to, your past nutrient value to maintain for future tense decades later. But once again, I'm not a scientist. So.
Well, I mean, you can speak to your experience though.
100%.
Yeah. It sounds like that's not been your experience at all. So okay. I don't know. Again, you don't want to get sucked into, arguing with people on the internet. That seems to be a fairly fruitless endeavor, but, it is interesting to me, especially to hear how some of those experiences land in the real world. And like your experience to me, especially, is probably impactful because, I've known you for years and I've seen you compete and I've seen what you can do. And so I don't know, it's always interesting to listen and to hear what you've got to say. And so what kind of touched a little bit on some of the tactics that you've used, and a lot of it seems to be being committed, being willing to go out of your way to get the stuff that you need, and just kind of learning. There's a learning component to figuring out like what types of foods do you need to put on the menu, and building up habits, like finding habits around what sorts of things do you prepare. And I suppose that's not super surprising, and it shouldn't be surprising because it's similar to the things that, any athlete would do, like especially I think iron sport athletes, physical preparation type of athletes, we get into our habits, lots of us eat the same thing or kind of the same thing more or less every day, but it goes in spurts. Like it's like, at least I'll speak for myself. Like I'll eat kind of the same type of thing and it might be in that pattern for, 3 or 4 months. Then you get tired of it and you find other things. You switch this out with that and you make whatever adjustments you've got to make. And now, the next 3 months look fairly different, but it's delivering a similar sort of nutrition profile. It's just different items, different flavor profiles and stuff like that. I would presume that it's pretty similar in your case.
Yeah, that for me, because there are some foods that are just so dense that you're eating like, oh, how many of these do I really need to fill up? And then you eat a couple, you're like, oh my gosh, hummus and falafel are big ones for me too. Like I can eat hummus and falafel. Next thing I know, I've got quite a caloric impact. Tempeh was another we had talked about, but I get on the kicks of my mornings. I normally have protein shake, and then I get to work and have a banana peanut butter, right? And then my lunch is going to be some sort of, like I said, the falafel and hummus is like one of the big portions I'll have there, where I'll get like some sort of pita chip and do that. And people may look at that and think, well, why aren't you, what do you mean? Don't you have something very big and, eat that up there and you need to feel satiated, and the calories are the calories, and then, maybe an hour after lunch, I'll have another protein shake, which is, I also hear that one where people say, well, you have a lot of protein shakes. I'm like, oh yeah, I had a lot of protein shakes before,
Yeah.
except for, I'm not trying to overcompensate, because I've actually dropped I've realized that I'm able to eat less protein now. And, I talked to, a nutritionist about that and why that would be. And they said, well, part of it is, when you're trying to break down some of the bigger, fattier proteins, it's taking a lot more for you to do so. I mean, like, so you may not be able to absorb as much, as not as readily, bioavailable, as if you have some that's broken down a little easier. So you'll take those in and you'll feel like you're eating, less, but your calories and everything are still satiating you, and giving you satiation. And then you're also getting the carbs that you need. And fats. I love fats, like avocados, olive oil, and just about anything. So those types of things, making pastas and, and that's our dinner time is regular family meals. But there's so many different options we can do. Sometimes we go with a full vegan meal. Sometimes, portions of it are vegan. And then, there's the option for non for, my wife and kids, because I don't force anyone to do what I'm doing. I mean, I lived for a lot of years in another style of nutritional and philosophical, belief. And then as things evolved, I changed. I can't tell somebody you should change right now. But what I do want to do is say, if you want to change, plants have all the protein you need. If that's the choice you want to take, great. Here's some of the ways that we can do this. And if not, I hope that, I can, by leading by example, show that, it can still be done, whether they choose to or not.
Love the leading by example part of this. You're doing more than that though. So like you're coaching as well, and coaching other people who've chosen to be vegan in powerlifting. Do you get much into the nutrition aspects of that, or do you pretty much stick to, hey, we're training and I'm paying mostly attention to training and deal with nutrition stuff if it comes up?
So most of the time, it's based around training. The times that I'm able to get more into nutrition with vegans that I'm working with is when they may be trying to get more protein than I think they really need, because they heard somewhere something, and then that's the same time. And like everyone's, body chemistry is different. Even if, you're looking at your gut health and microbiome and all those things, they're going to absorb differently and all, but being able to tell somebody, like, don't overcompensate just for something you think is going to change. If you've gone through this before, because I've had people that said, I went through this before, I tried getting more protein and it just doesn't make me feel good. I know I need more. Like, well, why do you feel like you need more? Do you weigh what you weigh? Yeah. Are your lists progressing? Well, yeah. There's this super utopian state that if I just do this, everything is so much better. And as we know, that's never really the case. There's not that panacea that's out there that, all I have to do is this one thing, then I become the best ever at something. It's the road that you take there and all the paths and the learnings and evolutions. And that's what I try to tell people is, don't try to be someone else. Just be you. And if this works for you, then let's modify that individual, and more recently, over the last couple of years, I've been working with a vegan strong plant belt team, and they've been around for years now. I'm doing meets, doing different events. And the big one we do is the Mr. America every year, where there's a powerlifting, bodybuilding, kettlebell, strongman, try to think there's some CrossFit, and we have this year, it's going to be 40 plus athletes that we're bringing out for these different disciplines, and all vegan. We're lucky enough to have, good sponsors. But yeah, it's Atlantic City, and I coached last year, the team, and we took home, it was a USAPL meet. And I think it was a fairly, 40, 45 lifters. And I think we took home 35%, 40% of the medals. Did it again. So, yeah. And then looking at how the performance was, like this year, we've got, any number of people. There's a guy, Dan Austin, who was a lifter, and he actually came out with a book called Vegan Meathead, where he goes through his own, how he eats, what he eats, the things that he does, and tries to break down some of those walls as far as, this is how you can do it. Whether you choose to or not, that's on you. I work with somebody, Nick Squire is one of my guys. He's a 242, and he actually just tore his bicep, maybe 10 weeks ago, something like 10, 12 weeks ago. And was thinking about, I should drop out of this. And Mike, we've been doing this for a long time. And so when you tell somebody, well, you can, but you don't have to. And so he adjusted around it, and now he's probably going to put up a 1650 total or so. And, he's squatting 600, pulls over 600, benches near 4 as a 242 vegan athlete. So there's people out there. We've got Katie Grosskopf is a 400 plus pound squatter. So there's any number of these people that will show you, from whether it's the body type they are, the strength level they are, the endurance athlete they are, that you can do this if you choose to. And that's what our message is. That plants have all the protein you need. You can do what you want to do in any type of lifestyle that you choose. And if you choose this one, you can be just the athlete you were or better. And there shouldn't be anything stopping you if this is your desire.
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, that's a message that sits well with me. I like the approach. And obviously I'm curious about a lot of this, and the tactics that you guys use to cover those nutritional bases that, like you mentioned before, society is set up a little bit, cater to a typical diet in a little bit of an easier way. So just pay attention and make the effort, build the habits. That's
100%.
That's pretty cool. I like as well that, big part of the message seems to be representation, in that, hey, you can, regardless of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, you can get there through multiple different paths. That's cool.
100%. Yep.
So when is the competition that you guys are preparing for? I didn't catch.
It's going to be October 6th through 8th. And so we're about 2.5 weeks out right now. I'm going to go in tonight, and I got my heavy squat, and we'll see. It's the first time I have a bar on my back in about 4 weeks. So we'll see if we can get a bar on my back. And if I can hit a couple around 300 kilos, I'll be pretty happy. So
that's pretty neat, man. So you'll be doing this one as an athlete and as a coach. Dual role.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it'll be a fun time.
I had no idea that Dan Austin was a vegan. That's a legendary powerlifter name as well, but I had no idea. So you mentioned that book, and I think maybe a couple others. Were there any other resources that were helpful for you, influential for you?
I think so. There was actually soon thereafter I turned to being vegan, there was a special that had come out, like as a Netflix or something. How was it called? Game Changers. And so I had seen that. I thought that was really, they took like NFL athletes and, different sects of sport, and went and saw, what happens when we change your diet, how does this work? And then they showed a couple, Patrick, who I had talked about before, was a strongman on there, several bodybuilders. So it was, that was something that, as I started referring people to it. And they're, and I've since kept in contact. I got to know the people that put that on and kept in contact with them. And, so they've been, great resources also. But yeah, just, I think being able to, like, the Vegan Strong page is another one, because you have resources, they're available. People often will have questions, and you'll try to find out, just search it on there. And there's some decent places that you can go and get your answers. And any of us that you see, vegan athletes, I think is another one, that will put spotlight people out there. And I've yet to see anyone that wouldn't answer a response, via Instagram or whatever the medium would be. Because that's kind of the messaging, right? We don't put ourselves out there not to help or not be heard. Here's what I think, and this works for me. What if I get a hold of you? Never get a hold of me. That's not really the message. So, I mean, I've been lucky enough to talk to people all over the world, even before, kind of being more towards the vegan side of my identity, which is as a lifter. And then when I do this, those same people reach back and they go, wait a minute, I've thought about this. And you'd be surprised how many people, have either thought of or had a misconception around, or, and I think the beta test was me in my first year. The three are like, oh, I see you're doing this, but we'll see what happens. And I think the next year, I've been vegan for 2 years. When I went to Sweden, they got, best lifter, which, like I said, I've been runner up 2 times, but then being able to get that was like, nice. That was a pretty nice setup. And then, having Canada last year and winning that again. So it really hasn't slowed things down. And it's, I think, good for people to see that, even though, and that's the other part of it, of the equation, right? Is I'm not getting any younger. So, I mean, I know I look like I'm in my 20s, but, I put this gray in my beard so I seem, more wise, but, I turned 47 and, I'm still putting up numbers that I think are respectable.
Absolutely.
And I'm still trying to drive to do, to do more, but I think, being as I've lifted for this long, I try to stay competitive. I've gone through the ebbs and flows. I mean, even this year, stress wise, new job, new house, which all about. You're doing all those things that life hits you with. I'm not a professional athlete, got 3 kids and a business and another job. And so all these things happen to all of us. That's the human experience. And there's no perfect answer, and there's no, quick switch to do it. But there's enough people out there that if you do have questions, you're able to ask, and the internet makes the world so much smaller now.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and that's a great note to wrap things on. Speaking of getting in contact with you, I think most people know how to operate social media these days, but just in case we need to make it a little bit easier, what would be the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah. My Instagram, Ryan_Stills_powerlifter. That's going to be the best way. I do respond. Even if, I do certain things and I'll get a decent influx of people, you'll always get a response. So, if you have questions, or you want to know, I have people reach out and want to be, people reach out and want to be part of the Vegan Strong, Plant Built team, for the next year. And that's often how I load up the teams, next season. Because I look back and I tell people, hit me up at this time. And then, come May or so, I get 5, 6, 7, 8 people that will say, remember when I talked to you last year? So yeah, so just being part of the team and even, supporting the team, then just it's spreading the word, and that's been our kind of, I guess you'd call it a calling. But I think it's a lucky one to have.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Ryan. It's always nice to sit down and chat with you, and to really kind of pick your brain and always pick up something new from your experiences. Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for sharing.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening, and we'll see you all next time.